Anonymous just said the following on social media. Everyone is worried about World War III. The thing is, if it happens, you all had the power to stop it. None of the armies had to follow their orders. No one had to lift a gun to end another human. It's all on you. Stop electing idiots and following them. End quote. Many people responded to this tweet as it was shared across Facebook and Instagram. One user said the following. This comment works on the basis that our current system is real. However, anyone over the age of 30 will know that politicians have been saying the same things now for several decades, and that elections don't really work. On top of this, these anonymous accounts are usually run by people who do nothing but tweet all day, and then point blame at others when they don't agree with everything that they say. Politics isn't black and white, and the majority of the time we are not fed the entire truth, and even when we are, people cannot accept that the politicians that they support are bad people. So instead of holding their side accountable, they just blame the other side, and yes, many of these anonymous accounts are guilty of doing this. Another user said the following. Realistically, what are people supposed to do at this point? Following the breadcrumbs to find out what is true and false these days is difficult at the best of times. Each side that pushes their own narrative is convincing, so I'm not sure what Anonymous wants people to do here. People see arguments from different perspectives, so this whole idea of we need to all come together is never going to work. If you're an American soldier, you're going to see things differently from someone who lives in the Middle East. Each thinks that the other is the enemy. The only thing that I can say is that we have some tough times ahead. The detonation of a nuclear warhead represents one of the most devastating scenarios humanity can face. The unparalleled destructive power of these weapons has the potential to wreak havoc on an unprecedented scale. The immediate effects of a nuclear detonation are characterized by the immense explosion and shockwave produced. The blast wave, traveling at supersonic speeds, can obliterate buildings, shatter glass, and cause widespread destruction. Nuclear preparedness becomes significantly more effective when one is situated outside the blast radius of a potential nuclear attack. In such a scenario, simply seeking shelter within the confines of your home and closing your doors will prove futile, as the destructive power of a nuclear explosion would render your house utterly obliterated. If fortune smiles upon you and ensures that you are spared the horrors of residing within the blast radius of any of these detonations, it may initially appear as though your day has been preserved from ruin. However, the inexorable truth remains that, sooner or later, the profound ramifications of such a catastrophe will inevitably infiltrate and ravage the entirety of your existence. During the initial moments of a nuclear weapon detonation, an immense amount of energy is released, primarily in the form of X-rays. These X-rays cause the immediate surroundings to rapidly heat up, resulting in the formation of a fireball composed of intensely heated air. Within this fiery sphere, the temperature and pressure reach such extreme levels that all forms of matter undergo a dramatic transformation. Specifically, everything present is transformed into a seething plasma consisting of bare atomic nuclei and subatomic particles. This phenomenon can be likened to the conditions found within the core of the Sun, where temperatures soar into the millions of degrees. The fireball that emerges after an airburst explosion from a powerful 300-kiloton nuclear weapon, such as the W-87 thermonuclear warhead found on the currently active Minuteman III missiles in the US nuclear arsenal, has the capability to expand to a diameter of more than 600 meters or 2,000 feet. During this expansion, it remains intensely luminous and dazzling to the eye for a duration of several seconds, before gradually cooling on its surface. The intense radiance emitted by the fireball's immense heat, responsible for more than 1/3 of the explosive energy of a thermonuclear weapon, possesses such intensity that it has the ability to initiate fires and inflict severe burns even at considerable distances. Notably, the thermal flash stemming from a 300-kiloton nuclear weapon can result in first-degree burns as far as 13 kilometers, equivalent to 8 miles away from the epicenter. This highlights the devastating consequences that arise from the far-reaching impact of the thermal energy produced by nuclear detonations. In the event of a 300-kiloton explosion, if it were to occur as an airburst, it would result in a powerful blast. The overpressure generated by this blast would reach levels exceeding 5 pounds per square inch, equivalent to 0.3 atmospheres, extending up to a distance of 4.7 kilometers, or 2.9 miles from the target. It is important to note that this level of pressure is significant enough to cause extensive damage to residential homes, leaving them completely destroyed. Shortly after the nuclear explosion has released the majority of its energy through direct radiation, heat, and blast, the fireball undergoes a cooling process and ascends into the sky, giving rise to the distinctive mushroom cloud. Deep within this cloud exists a potent mixture of split atoms containing high levels of radioactivity. Eventually, this radioactive brew will begin to settle down from the cloud, propelled by the forces of the wind. This phenomenon, known as radioactive fallout, represents a delayed manifestation of radioactivity. It poses a significant threat to survivors in the aftermath of a nuclear war, subjecting them to perilously high levels of ionizing radiation, which can prove near lethal. When it comes to the explosion, the extent of contamination caused by the fallout is influenced by two main factors: the explosive power of the warhead, referred to as the fission yield, and the altitude at which it detonates, known as the height of burst. In the case of weapons with yields in the hundreds of kilotons, the immediate danger zone can cover a vast area, spanning thousands of square kilometers in the downwind direction from the blast site. Initially, the radiation levels will be primarily determined by isotopes with short half-lives, which are incredibly energetic and pose the greatest threat to biological systems. The acute, life-threatening effects resulting from the fallout can persist for several days to weeks. It is for this reason that authorities advise individuals to remain indoors for a minimum of 48 hours, giving radiation levels ample time to diminish. Due to the delayed effects of nuclear fallout, accurately estimating casualties becomes challenging. The number of people who would lose their life and injuries resulting from an explosion depends largely on the actions individuals take in the aftermath. In the immediate vicinity of the blast, buildings will be completely destroyed, leaving survivors without any means of shelter. According to the US Nuclear Regulatory Commission, it is widely believed that humans exposed to a radiation dose of approximately 500 rem all at once are likely to succumb to their injuries without proper medical intervention. This underscores the criticality of prompt and effective medical treatment in such scenarios. Determined by the comprehensive evaluation of prevailing circumstances, accurately predicting the exact number of casualties resulting from nuclear fallout proves to be a complex undertaking. Post-explosion mortality rates and injury statistics hinge heavily upon the proactive measures taken by individuals navigating the aftermath. In the scenario where ground zero is nearby, it is highly likely that a nuclear explosion with a yield of 300 kilotons would result in the severe burning and crushing of individuals within its vicinity. It is worth noting that as the yield of the nuclear weapon increases, the area affected by acute radiation becomes relatively smaller compared to other immediate impacts. One single detonation of a 300 kiloton nuclear warhead in today's context, which is nearly 10 times more powerful than the combined explosion of the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, could result in a devastating aftermath. Specifically, if such an explosion were to occur in a densely populated city like New York, the immediate consequences would be catastrophic. In the first 24 hours following the detonation, the loss of life would reach staggering proportions, with over 1 million people tragically losing their lives. Additionally, the number of individuals who sustained serious injuries would be twice the aforementioned fatality count. The impact of such an explosion would be felt far beyond the immediate vicinity of the blast. In the case of a regional nuclear conflict breaking out between India and Pakistan, where approximately 100 nuclear weapons, each with a yield of 15 kilotons, were deployed on urban targets, the direct loss of human life would be staggering, resulting in an estimated 27 million fatalities. In the context of a full-scale global conflict involving the United States and Russia, characterized by the utilization of over 4,100 kiloton nuclear warheads, it is important to consider the catastrophic consequences that would ensue. In the worst-case scenario, a conflict of this magnitude would result in a staggering loss of human life, with an estimated minimum of 360 million individuals meeting their demise in a swift manner. This estimate is formulated based on a hypothetical scenario in which a total nuclear conflict breaks out between Russia and the United States, encompassing the utilization of 4,400 weapons with a 100 kiloton yield. These figures adhere to the limits set forth by the 2002 Strategic Offensive Reductions Treaty, which allows each country to deploy a maximum of 2,200 strategic warheads. However, it is important to note that the 2010 new Strategic Offensive Reductions Treaty further restricts the number of deployed long-range nuclear forces to 1,550 warheads for both the United States and Russia. It is worth mentioning that the average yield of the strategic nuclear forces possessed by Russia and the United States significantly surpasses the 100 kiloton mark. Consequently, if a complete nuclear exchange were to occur between the two nations, involving approximately 3,000 weapons, the resultant direct casualties and emissions of soot would likely be comparable. This analysis emphasizes the potential devastating consequences of a large-scale nuclear conflict, highlighting the need for continued efforts in nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation. In the event of a full-scale nuclear conflict between Russia and the United States, it is important to note that the scope of destruction would extend beyond targeting each other's homelands. Both nations, aiming to maximize their military capabilities, would not only direct their nuclear missiles towards one another, but also consider other countries as potential targets. This includes countries possessing their own nuclear weapons. These nations, now caught in a precarious position, would potentially retaliate by launching their entire arsenal or a portion thereof in response to the escalating conflict. In the present scenario, the global nuclear landscape is characterized by the possession of a considerable number of nuclear warheads by several countries. Though the statistics are undeniably horrifying, the sheer magnitude of the tens to hundreds of millions of casualties resulting from a nuclear conflict within the initial days merely represents the early stages of a calamity that will eventually engulf the entire globe. This catastrophic scenario entails not only loss of life and injuries on an unimaginable scale, but also far-reaching and long-lasting implications that will afflict humanity in profound ways. Survivors of a nuclear war may face a grim and challenging future, characterized by global climatic shifts, far-reaching radioactive contamination, and the collapse of societal structures on a global scale. These devastating consequences are likely to persist for countless decades, impacting every corner of the globe. In the aftermath of a nuclear war, regardless of its magnitude, the dire consequences of famine alone cannot be overlooked. Surprisingly, the devastating impact of widespread food shortages exceeds that of the numerous bomb explosions that occurred during the war. In recent years, there has been a growing perception within certain US military and policy circles that it is possible to engage in a limited nuclear war and emerge as the victor. However, experts in the field strongly disagree with this notion, asserting that a limited nuclear conflict is highly unlikely to remain limited in scope or impact. It is essential to recognize that what may initially begin as a single tactical nuclear strike or a retaliatory nuclear exchange between two nations has the potential to rapidly escalate into a full-scale nuclear war, resulting in the complete and immediate annihilation of both countries involved. The prevailing concern among experts is rooted in the realization that the destructive capabilities of nuclear weapons are unmatched, making any form of limited engagement highly unpredictable and unmanageable. However, the calamity will extend beyond just the two main warring parties and their respective supporters. The long-term impacts of nuclear explosions, both regionally and globally, often receive less attention in public discussions compared to the immediate and visible local consequences. Additionally, military planners have primarily focused on assessing the short-term effects of nuclear explosions, as their task involves estimating the impact of nuclear forces on civilian and military targets. However, it is important to recognize that there are other significant outcomes to consider from a military standpoint, such as blast effects, local radiation fallout, and the disruptive electromagnetic pulse, a powerful burst of radio waves that can potentially damage electronic equipment. When examining the extensive ramifications of nuclear explosions, it becomes evident that the public discourse tends to overlook the long-lasting and widespread repercussions. Instead, attention is often fixated on the immediate devastation witnessed at ground zero. While these immediate effects are undeniably horrific, it is crucial to recognize the far-reaching consequences that extend beyond the immediate impact zone. In the context of global nuclear warfare, it is crucial to consider not only the immediate impact of nuclear explosions, but also the broader consequences, such as widespread fires and other climatic changes. Unfortunately, these collateral effects are often overlooked in war plans and nuclear doctrines. The difficulty in predicting these effects lies in the fact that they require scientific knowledge that is typically absent from the expertise of military planners. However, it is important to acknowledge that these unanticipated consequences can have a catastrophic impact on humanity. In the aftermath of a nuclear war, the combined effects of these collateral damages could potentially result in the loss of more than half the world's population. This alarming outcome highlights the urgency of understanding and mitigating the far-reaching implications of nuclear conflict. Since the 1980s, when the threat of nuclear war became more imminent, scientists have dedicated their efforts to extensively researching the long-term and far-reaching consequences of a nuclear conflict on Earth's various systems. Initial studies conducted by American scientists utilized a radiative convective climate model to simulate the vertical distribution of atmospheric temperatures, effectively demonstrating the potential occurrence of a catastrophic phenomenon known as a nuclear winter. This would arise from the immense amount of smoke generated by extensive forest fires triggered by nuclear detonations in the aftermath of a nuclear war. Subsequently, 2 Russian scientists conducted pioneering research by implementing 3-dimensional climate modeling, which revealed intriguing insights into the potential impact of a global nuclear conflict. They found that global temperatures would decrease more significantly over land masses compared to oceanic areas. Such a temperature reduction could potentially trigger a widespread collapse of agricultural systems, posing severe threats to food production worldwide. It is crucial to note that early interpretations of these findings faced considerable controversy due to inherent uncertainties associated with varied scenarios and physical parameters. However, as scientific models have become more sophisticated, the concept of nuclear winter theory has gained increasing support. While the fundamental mechanisms explaining the occurrence of nuclear winter, as described in the initial studies, still hold true today, recent calculations and advancements in climate modeling have demonstrated that the consequences of a nuclear war would be even more protracted and devastating than previously envisaged. So, what do you make of these recent comments from Anonymous? Be sure to leave your questions and answers in the comment section below and help us to grow this community while working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.